Man, this has been great. I only got two questions for you, but left. But so I promise. The first one was I've circled Ohio State, Oregon because
Yeah.
I'm already very excited about that game. But is that the biggest game on the schedule for Ohio State for you?
Well, I would be run out of town if I didn't say the rivalry in the end of November has to be important. But as long I've never covered a Michigan win over Ohio State in my career, so I get jokes from my colleague Jeremy Birmingham all the time that you still have to put that up there because it's so important to Ohio State, and I get it. But those two teams right now are just not on the same level in my mind. Oregon, I'm hoping that everything works out with the schedule. I'm
Right.
still a little pessimistic that it will with maybe a conference only schedule. We'll see. But no matter what, because I think taking a chance like that and aggressive scheduling, I think it needs to be rewarded. But even if it's played as scheduled, Ohio State goes out there, I think they'd win the game. But even if they lose it and play on the road, the one that truly matters, the one that has been the East Division title game, the one that is two playoff caliber rosters, is Ohio State at Penn State. And I don't know how many people will be in the stands. It probably wouldn't be a whiteout in the traditional sense because, I know the schedules are all in flux, but, Fox with the big noon game and,
Right.
There was supposed to be a World Series game. It seemed like that game was going to be at noon, which takes a little bit of the sting out. But those are the two most talented teams in the Big Ten. Those are the two, coaches that are hailed as the best in the league. They've done the best recruiting job. Penn State's going to have, I think, when we get closer towards, the virtual conference media days, they'll start getting more hype as a team that can dethrone Ohio State. And hey, they've got the game at home, and they've played really competitive games against them in the last few years. It's the most even matchup. And when you look at Ohio State, Oregon, and that's a game traditionally you'd think that could be the one you could lose and maybe bounce back from, but you can't lose to Penn State if you're Ohio State, because I don't think Penn State's going to have many other troubles in the league, and that's going to be the one that I think determines who really emerges from the Big Ten.
Last question I had for you is which true freshman has the best opportunity to make a dent on this team?
That's a good one. It's gonna be really tough. It's probably going to happen at wide receiver, not only because those players are really, really good, and Julian Fleming is, when he arrives on campus, he's the most pro-ready looking receiver that you could possibly imagine. But you've got Jackson Smith and Jigba, who I've talked to a number of people who are absolutely crazy gaga over this kid's ability, and broke all kinds of records down in Texas. I think both of those guys are going to have an opportunity to play right away. The interesting one to watch, and it's not usually a good sign if you're trying to rely on a true freshman on the offensive line, but Paris Johnson being the top-rated tackle in the country, on that one day of spring practice that we got to watch in Columbus, of the three that they had before the shutdown, they gave him some split reps with Nicholas Petit-Frere at right tackle. Where Ohio State's got an open competition there for the job. I mean, Petit-Frere was also the top-rated tackle in the country 2 years ago. It wouldn't be it wouldn't be encouraging for Ohio State if he wasn't ready for that job. And I think that he will be. But Paris Johnson, this kid's just different. And there've only been two true freshmen in Ohio State history to start on the offensive line from day one. One was Orlando Pace, and Michael Jordan did it a couple of years ago at guard, but that's huge. That's a huge ask. Can Paris Johnson do that? I think he's going to get chances to play, especially early. They're not going to take it slow with him. He's obviously not going to redshirt. You see this kid and everything he brings to the table. There's very little chance that he would be in Columbus longer than 3 years. So he won't redshirt. They'll get him the reps. They'll let him compete, and then we'll see what happens. They've talked in the past that they wouldn't be opposed to playing two guys out there. I think that's harder to do than on the offensive line than some other places, of course. But that kid, he's going to be one that when we talk about the freaks, maybe next summer or the year after, when we're talking on your show, that he's going to be a special one with what he brings to the table. But as you mentioned, you said it yourself early on, there are a lot of names that on this Ohio State roster. They have star power returning and a lot of veteran players. There's just they don't have a lot of need for those true freshmen to help, and that's really what you're trying to build if you're any powerhouse program where you're not relying and you can take your time, get it right with the development. And that's really this, talking about the situation Ohio State's in. That's where they're at right now.
Hey man, look, I'm on record as picking Alabama back in January, and Ohio State's still the only team that I feel very, very pessimistic about when I make that pick. Nobody else. It's just so I really expect those two to be in the national championship game come the end of the year. Austin Ward, beat writer for Letterman Row, covering Ohio State, does a fantastic job. I'm reading his work. I'm reading Jeremy Birmingham's work. I lurk on the site. Thanks so much for your time, man.
Hey, I appreciate you having me, and I have so much respect for what you're doing as well. So it was really cool to catch up with you.
Right on, man. Austin, I'm probably gonna put this up in portions over the next week. I can tag you on Twitter if that's a big deal.